Okay, we should be ready to go. Thanks, Carol.
Terrific. Thanks so much, everybody. I really appreciate you making some time today to talk a little bit. Oh, I'm getting some feedback. Oh, there we go.
If everyone can mute
Is that
themselves,
a little bit better?
This is better. Someone's mic was just on, so if you can mute unless you're asking a question or a comment, that would be great. Thanks.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. My name's Carol Kando-Pineda. I'm an attorney with the Federal Trade Commission, but really I spend most of my time doing consumer and business education, blog posts, videos, webinars like this, presentations. We take the messages that we learn from the investigations that we do, and we turn them into plain language, actionable advice for consumers. So we don't want to get people riled up and scared for no reason, or just for the sake of being concerned about a particular scam. We want to give them the tools that actually help them to avoid that scam or to recover from it if they happen to pay a scammer money. So we might as well jump right in, and I can get into a little bit more detail. So today I'm going to just give you a little bit of information about the scope of the fraud problem, because it's been around for a long time, and I know sometimes people feel like, oh, we already know about this, but it is still a pretty big issue. And then we'll talk a little bit about sort of the basics of a scam, and then how they're evolving and how those stories are changing. We'll have some tips about how to protect yourself online, and then I've got some FTC resources that will be especially helpful for you as librarians to share with your patrons. Okay, so when you'll hear me talk about reportfraud.ftc.gov. That is the FTC site to report when you run into a scam, whether you've lost money or not, a deceptive practice, ripoff, things like that. And so at the end of the year, our data analysts collect all of the reports we got for the year, and they put them into a data book, and that comes out, I don't know, maybe February of the next year. So for 2022, we got 2.4 million reports from consumers. That's pretty consistent over the last several years. Around 2 million is generally what we get. They creep up generally, but this year, what was kind of notable was that 2.4 million is actually down from 2021. So I think 2021 was maybe 2.6 million. So we've got fewer complaints. But if you look at the amount of money that was lost, it's gone way, way up. The amount of money that consumers lost to fraud last year that was reported to us, so that isn't even a total, that's just what we know people reported to us. It was over 8.8 billion. That number's since been revised up to about 9 billion. That's 2 billion more than the year before. So just an enormous number and an enormous increase. I don't think we know completely why the number is so high or why it's gotten so much higher, but I suspect that it may have something to do with investment scams, and there tends to be higher amounts of money lost to those kinds of scams. And more people are starting to get interested in doing things like investing in cryptocurrency, and that's being reflected in the fraud reports. I'd just like to point out this little difference here, that because we often think that scams and this kind of fraud is a problem just for older people, just for older adults. And that's not really the case. Certainly, we have people that are affected by scams that are older, but lots and lots of people that are on the younger end of the spectrum are affected by scams as well. So younger people reported losing money to fraud more often than older people, right? You can see it's almost double in that age category between people in their 20s versus people in their 70s. But when people aged 70 and older had a loss, the median loss of money was much higher. So it could be the type of a scam. It could just be that they have more money to be able to lose. It's hard to know. But it's just kind of a notable point that we know fraud affects everybody. It just affects different populations, different communities in different ways. So the top categories of fraud for 2022 were imposters, online shopping, prizes, sweepstakes, and lotteries, investments, and business and job opportunities. Pretty consistent with what we've seen over the last few years. Imposters have been the number one form of scam probably for 10 years now, because it's a very general kind of a thing. An imposter is anybody that's impersonating somebody legitimate to gain your trust, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Online shopping has been a report category for many years, since online shopping existed, but it was always a very small fraction. It was always pretty far down on the list. Never really broke the top 10 until the pandemic, when everybody went online and everybody was buying a lot of their everyday needs and certainly pandemic-related products online. And the scammers know that, and they followed us online. And it's just, even though we don't have pandemic restrictions anymore and people are free to shop elsewhere, online shopping is still very, very popular. And the scammers know that, and the reports are still pretty high. Prizes, sweepstakes, and lotteries have always been a popular category. Sort of plays into the possibility and the hope that maybe somebody had a windfall. It's a very powerful motivator. Investment scams, I think I mentioned, have gone up. I believe the amount of money lost has almost doubled. I've got a slide on this in a minute. But very large losses, and most likely due to cryptocurrency. So that's another thing we'll talk about. And then business and job opportunities. Whenever the economy slows down a little bit, or that people perceive that it has slowed down, or it has slowed down for some people, you'll see these kinds of scams become even more popular than they generally are. Anything to entice people to share their personal information or to pay money by promising them job flexibility and remote work and interesting work, and you don't have to leave home, and you can make lots of money, and you don't need to have special training, and anything that's going to appeal to people that feels like, oh, this is going to fill that need. Let me jump on this right now. Oh yeah, and I just found my investment scam stat. So investment scams doubled. The amount of money lost doubled between 2021 and 2022. 2022, the consumers that reported to us lost 3.8 billion to investment scams. Again, just like staggering numbers. I wanted to point this out because I think most of us have heard about scammers reaching out by phone, often by email, certainly by text. But now more and more frauds are beginning on social media. And so it's important for us to let people know that it might not just be an unwanted contact, or it might not be somebody that's just reaching out to in friendship or for a romance, or for a legitimate deal. It could be somebody that's trying to scam them as well. You can see 1.2 billion was reported lost to scams that began over social media. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the nitty-gritty of these scams and sort of what they entail. So impersonators, imposters, kind of interchangeable. It's just a scammer that pretends to be somebody legitimate to gain your trust, to get you to send them money or to share personal information so that they can commit identity theft or sell it to somebody else to commit identity theft. The stories are very, very varied. The impersonators may pretend to be from a government agency, even the FTC. There are FTC impersonators out there telling people that there's just been a recent case and you have money coming back to you, but you need to pay the taxes on it. There's a fee from the FTC collections division that you need to pay in order for us to release the check to you. They make up all kinds of stories that, to me, they sound wild because I know it doesn't work that way. But if you don't work at the FTC, you don't necessarily know how things work, and they sound very, very plausible. And FTC's in the news an awful lot for getting money back to consumers. And so people think this really could be real, and they end up sharing information or sending money to folks. But the scammers could say that they were from the IRS and that you owe back taxes from Social Security. There's something wrong with your social security number. They can pretend to be from your bank and that there's a problem with your account. They can pretend to be there from Amazon or FedEx and that you have a package waiting for you, but there are some fees that need to be paid, or you need to click on a link to be able to figure out how to get your package. But if you click on that link, the scammer will download harmful software onto your device, and you might not even know what happened while they're stealing information from your device, from your laptop, from your phone. And you may not know until the device starts to act funny, or you see signs of identity theft or some kind of a theft. So if you want to learn a little bit more about all the varieties of different kinds of imposters, because there's lots of them, you can go to ftc.gov/imposters. You can learn a little bit more. What I wanted to share with you today are two of those big warning signs that you can look out for, because the stories are varied and they do change. They evolve over time because they know that consumers are learning, and there are lots of people out there trying to warn consumers and trying to tell them what's going on. And so they make little adjustments to sort of evade what we've already told people. And that's one of the warning signs. The scammers are very professional, and they know that all they have to do is get you off balance for a minute or two, just long enough to get you really concerned. They create a sense of urgency, very high emotion. There's always something really dire that's going to happen, or there's some incredible windfall that you're going to lose if you don't act right away. They pressure you to act immediately because they know the sooner they can get to pressure you to act, they can get in, out, it's done. They've got your information, they've got your money. So high emotion, urgency, pressure, high pressure sales tactics. They can solve your problems if only you pay them, if only you give them some money. If you hear somebody talking about that, your antenna should go up. That's like one of the major warning signs of a scam. And the second is that if all of this is going on and the person who reached out to you is insisting that you pay them by bank or wire transfer, by a payment app, with cryptocurrency, or with gift cards, and you send them the PIN. Only scammers do that, right? That is a classic warning sign of a scam. So no matter what the story is, if somebody's pressuring you to pay in these ways, you know that it's a scam. And that's one of those things, I think we've had a lot of success sharing this information with cashiers at big box stores or other places where people buy gift cards. And we know that sometimes the cashiers have witnessed people buying gift cards for, and they're on the phone with the scammer, and the scammer's telling them what to do. And the cashier was able to stop and get somebody to listen and to hang up and to not send those gift cards. They're not always able to stop people to do that. But I think the more of us that know about that, the more of us that are aware of it, we can reach out to the people that aren't aware of it and get them to stop. And so if you hear somebody, in your library talking about those kinds of things, those are your red flags. Bank impersonation. Oh, go right ahead. Do we have a question? Okay, I'm just going to continue, and if there is a question, just interrupt me. So I mentioned this very briefly as one of the impersonators. Bank impersonators is a big one. It's been around for a long time, but they keep coming back because that's where people's money is, right? And if they can pressure you to reveal an account number, they can go in and clean out your account. So another warning sign I want to tell you, it's not so much of a red flag, but it's a warning that you can't use caller ID as a way to prove to yourself that a call is legitimate, right? A lot of people will say, well, I looked, it said 202-326-3152, which is my FTC telephone number. So if you went and looked that up, you would see that number goes with my name and I'm an FTC employee, right? That seems like, ooh, this must be legitimate. But caller ID can be spoofed. It can be faked. I don't know how to do it, but the scammers do, and I think it's a pretty easy technological fix that they can do to spoof that telephone number. So you just can't use that as your proof that the caller is legitimate. And so really, you just want people to know, don't give out personal information to anybody who contacts you out of the blue. If it's really legitimate, if it's really your bank, if it's really a company that you do business with, um, then hang up and contact your bank, contact that business at a telephone number that you know is correct, that you know is legitimate, that you've gotten off of their website, that you've gotten off of a statement or account information that you have from them. And then you've initiated the call, you know who you're talking to, and you can find out if there's a problem. And I would guarantee 99 and 9/10% of the time, there is no problem, and that a scammer called you. And that's the way for you to check up on it if people are really uncomfortable with just hanging up and walking away. And we certainly want to tell people not to click on links in unexpected texts or emails, because that does allow, if it's a link from a scammer, and most of the time it is, um, then that's either going to take you to a site that they control that will be able to monitor what you're doing on the site and and copy down your account number and your passwords and things like that, or it will load um, harmful software onto your device, and it will be able to get into the bowels of your files and look around and steal information and take things that way. If you've clicked on a link by mistake, update your phone and the computer or your computer software. That probably will run a scan, and if you do it, especially if you do it fast enough, it should be able to help you out. It's the best first thing that you can do to try to mitigate any damage. Okay, so I had mentioned payment apps. If you want more information about that, we've got a URL right there, ftc.gov/payment apps. So that's things like, Venmo and Zelle and those kinds of things, Cash App. Um, so, obviously scammers are starting to gravitate towards those payment apps because they know people use them, and they might not always know that, consumers might not always know, the best practices or the unintended consequences, things like that. And they might not know, you've got more protections if you pay for anything with a credit card. That's just how the law is. And you don't have similar protections with other sorts of payment methods. But there are some basic things that you can do to try to protect yourself a little bit. Before you pay anybody using a payment app, make sure you know exactly who you're sending the money to. Even if the address or the number looks familiar, double check it. Make sure it really is your pal, or the person that you're pretty sure you owe money to, or that um, that you're buying something from. Just confirm that information, and that you're sending it to the person that you are intending to send it to. You don't want to ever share your login credentials or information with a pal. It's tempting sometimes, and you might do it to help somebody out, but it's probably not a best practice, because it could compromise. Even if you trust the person that you're sharing it with, you don't know who else might be able to see that or get that information, and it's made your account vulnerable at that point. And whenever it's possible, sign up to use multi-factor authentication. So what that is, we generally, use passwords, right? So, and we'll talk in a few minutes about some of the rules for passwords. Multi-factor authentication is a password paired with something that you have, that you can get, like a token or a number that's generated from an app, or a text that you get from the authentication company that you have to log in and confirm that you got it. It's just another layer of security. It can that second step can also be something that's about you, like a biometric thing, like a retina scan or a thumbprint, or something like that. It just adds that little bit of extra. That second step does help protect your accounts. Certainly not foolproof, and I know there are problems with it. And the technologists among us are trying to find other verification methods that are even more secure. So we'll be moving towards something else at some point. But multi-factor right now is really it's a good thing to help add a little extra protection to your accounts. Wanted to touch on romance scams. I know people have probably heard about this. You know, the scammers create profiles just like everybody else do. They create phony profiles. Sometimes they steal photos from actual people. And that's one of the ways that you can maybe determine whether you're dealing with a scammer. If something doesn't seem right, do a reverse image search on the profile picture. And if that picture appears in other places under different names, you know, you're dealing with somebody you don't want to be dealing with, right there. It's a fake profile. So they don't always do that, but that's one way to tell. So the scammers are on dating apps, but they're also on social media. So you may have a scammer, you know, approaching you on some sort of a social site the same way they would approach somebody on an online dating site. You know, let's be friends, or, you know, hey, you look interesting, or whatever flirtation they're going to come up with. The whole point of the romance scam is it's kind of a long game. You know, it's not like they reach out once and see what happens. They can be in contact with the consumer for a long time, for weeks, maybe even months, and sort of try to string them along, try to build up some sort of a joint experience so that they can gain your trust. And then at some point, they need money for some reason. There's always a story that sounds plausible and legitimate. There's always a plausible story why they can't meet you in person. They very often will say that they're in the military and they're stationed abroad, that they're a business person, and they have, you know, they're assigned to work in Europe or somewhere far away where they can't get back readily. They may say that they've got a family member in the United States that needs surgery and they can't be there. And could you, you know, I need to get them some money. Could you help me send money to them to help them out? Or the new twist, which is sort of fueling some of this rise in investment scams, is the scammer may say, they refer to your relationship, and that you're in a relationship together, and they really sort of build that myth that so that the consumer believes this is somebody that they trust, this is somebody that I'm in a relationship with, this is somebody I care about that cares about me, and we're talking about building our future together. And I want to show you how to invest. And I'm going to show you how to invest in cryptocurrency so we can build our nest egg, so that we can get married, so that we can buy a house, so that we can move, we can be together, whatever it is. But it's very appealing because they're going to show you how to invest, and you think that you trust this person, you think you know this person because maybe you've been talking to them for a long time. The scammer may even go so far as to set up a fake website so that you can log into it, and you think you're logging into an actual investment dashboard, and it looks very legitimate, and they may even have you, you know, deposit a small amount of money in it, and then you can get it right back out again. And so you feel like, oh, this is the real thing, this is great. And so people feel that it's safe for them to deposit $10,000, $20,000 in it because it's with their friend and it's at the site that I checked out. But as soon as that money is in the account, the dashboard goes away. It was never real. You can't get into an account. You can't, the person's not answering your texts, your calls, whatever. The love interest has disappeared and your money has disappeared, and there's no trail for you to be able to trace it. So that's sort of the last thing I wanted to underline. With the romance scams, it's the same thing. If somebody is demanding, it could sound completely legitimate and heartfelt, and you think you maybe you're dealing with somebody real. But if they're demanding that you send them money for whatever the story is, and they want it to be through a wire transfer, through cryptocurrency, through the gift cards, or even the payment app, then you know you're probably dealing with somebody you don't want to be dealing with. And that's probably driving, the cryptocurrency investment is probably driving that increase in the reported amounts lost and the prevalence of the investment scams now. So this one is kind of an odd one. I wanted to mention it because it's recent. And it was supposedly from people were getting emails from somebody claiming to be a lawyer in Canada, and that they have a client who's deceased, and they have no living relatives. They ran a scan and they couldn't find anybody that was tied to this person. They've got this big life insurance policy, and you have got the same last name as this person. And so, since there were no living relatives, I can cut you a deal where I will give you a third of the insurance policy. I'll keep a third of it, and then we'll donate the other third to charity. And because otherwise the money is just going to go to waste and it just stays with the insurance company. So this is kind of the opposite. It's not like I'm going to, I need you to send me money. This is, you're going to get this big windfall and it's going to be great for everybody. But then you send your information and you don't get any money. You don't get anything. They've just stolen your information. And then they use your information to commit identity theft and steal in your name, basically. These letters, we got reports that a lot of people in Korean, Vietnamese, and Latino communities were getting these letters. And it looks like it's an easy way to get money, and you're even donating part of it to charity. So it doesn't seem like it's a really bad thing, but it's just another way for people to steal your information. I wanted to share this because I know earlier this year we had sent some information about the financial fallout from weather emergencies to various communities that had weather emergencies like Vermont. So I just wanted to be sure that you had this URL, ftc.gov/weather emergencies, because, first and foremost, you're going to see imposters pretending to be from FEMA, and they'll charge people for help with filing their FEMA claims. Okay, FEMA does not charge anybody to file claims or to do paperwork or to come out and do an inspection. And so somebody that does that is not legitimate. And particularly if they're pressuring people to share a lot of credit card information and social security information, or to pay in one of these suspect ways, you're dealing with a scammer. But there are other kinds of scams that could be involved, including shady contractors. We've got tips on like at a certain time of year to do, how you would put together a go bag, right? In case of emergency. Well, you want to do a similar kind of thing with your financial information to make sure that, you've got documents that prove your identity, that you might, your car title, your documents related to your house, and sort of weatherproof, protected pouches, put them in a safe deposit box, or in a lock box that you could bring with you. Those kinds of things that you can, it's like, making sure that there are batteries in your flashlights, right? Making sure that all of your paperwork is lined up. And so we've got a lot of advice about that, about how to pull all that together so you have it, so that if you do have to leave your home in an emergency, you have a plan to meet up with other family members, and you have a plan to be able to access money to be able to live and to leave the emergency area, and your documents that you'll need. Okay, so family emergency scams have been around for a long time as well, but that's when you get generally a phone call that pretends to be a family member, or a police officer, a judge, some other kind of figure of authority, and they're either holding your loved one in a jail, they're at a hospital trying to treat your loved one, and there's always a reason why you need to send money. They're not going to be able to get medical care unless you pay for it ahead of time. They're not going to be able to spring them out of this jail in Mexico unless you send them bail money. And there's always a lot of confusion on the line, and sometimes they may pretend to put your loved one on to talk, but it's very garbled and you can't really tell whether it's them or not. It doesn't sound right, but it's enough to rattle people and to make them feel really fearful that a family member is in trouble. So the twist on this now is that with AI voice cloning technology, scammers can look on social media or on YouTube or just online in various places and be able to get enough copies of a loved one's voice that they can clone the voice and make it say things that your loved one has never said. So you combine one of these phone calls with the high pressure story, with the garbled sense of confusion. And in the background, you can hear a voice that sounds exactly like your daughter or exactly like your husband or exactly like your best friend. And, you know, they're crying, they're pleading for your help, you know, that whatever it is, it really ramps up that sense of panic, emergency, and pressure. And it makes it very, very difficult for people to hang up and walk away. But the best thing that you can do is, even if you don't want to hang up, is to try to put it on hold and call the person whose voice you think you hear and try to reach them directly, or try to reach somebody that can reach them directly, because chances are you'll be able to talk to them, or somebody will say, he's sitting right here next to me, he's okay, don't worry about it. And you can just hang up and know that it's a scammer. I know that that's tough, but that's probably the best way. You certainly don't want to start engaging with the caller and sharing information and sending them money. You really just want to be able to verify where your loved one's at. So another scam that we're seeing on social media involves scammers hacking into legitimate businesses or just websites that maybe you follow. So imagine, like, you follow a local photographer, and then all of a sudden you get a text that says, hey, there's a giveaway from this photographer, and you won, and you just have to send us your credit card information and you can claim your prize. So obviously very appealing, and it sort of might look like it's from an actual business or this business that you're familiar with. But you have to say to yourself, you know, you don't want to click on any of those links, right? Because that's never a good idea. If you really think that maybe you won something, contact that business in a way you know is legitimate, and reach out to them that way and see what you can find out, right? Before you click on anything or before you share anything. But then ask yourself, really, do they, you know, even if they are who they say they are, do they need my credit card information for me to claim a prize? If it's a free prize, it should be a free prize, right? Doesn't mean that you give anything in return. And so you may want to really think twice about that, because it probably could be a scammer, and it's just not a good idea to be sharing information like that. So this I wanted to mention because it's kind of timely, and you may have seen people dealing with this already. So during the pandemic, there was a rule put in place so that nobody had to re-enroll in Medicaid. You were automatically enrolled, and so this is for people that need that kind of health coverage. And so that lasted throughout the public health emergency. And earlier this year, those protections were removed since the public health emergency is over. And so now millions of people have got to renew or re-enroll in Medicaid. And in some cases, these people have never had to go through this process at all. So there's a lot of confusion out there. Again, scammers know that. If there's a gap in knowledge, scammers are going to jump in and try to take advantage. So there are imposters that are reaching out to people and pretending to be from their state Medicaid agency, because Medicaid is administered, you know, on a state level. That makes it a little harder for us to warn people, because every state is a little different in terms of how they're going to reach out to their consumer. And every state Medicaid agency is called something different. So you can't just say state Medicaid agency. It may be called something, one thing in Alabama and another thing in Maine and a different thing in Vermont. So we're reaching out to as many people at the state level as possible to let them know that this is happening, so that if you see people that are encountering this, you know how to help them out. Basically, the scammers are calling, pretending to be from the state Medicaid agency, and they're claiming that if you pay them, there's a fee to re-enroll for Medicaid, or if you pay them, they'll help you re-enroll. That's not true. Medicaid is not going to charge to renew anybody or to enroll them in Medicaid. And so they should not have to pay anybody money to be able to do that. And second, if people no longer qualify and they can't enroll, they're probably going to be looking for another source of health insurance. And that's where another kind of a scammer comes in, where they may try to sell people, they may call it insurance, and they may say they've got affordable coverage for them. And people, if they pay for it, they'll eventually find out that they think they have major medical insurance, with maybe a few limitations on it, but it's not actually insurance at all. It's either just discounts on certain procedures or certain examinations, or it's nothing. It really is nothing. They were just selling you a fake product. And so the best place for people to start is healthcare.gov. Because then they can compare different plans, they can see what the costs are, they can see what the coverage is. And if they buy through healthcare.gov, then they're more likely to get an actual real insurance product. So I always throw this in just because it's such a weird thing. I almost fell for this at one point, and it wasn't because I wasn't suspicious, because I got a text and it had my own telephone. It was a text, and I actually have gotten texts and phone calls from my own telephone number. And I thought, what the heck is this? This is kind of crazy. I said, well, this can't be right. I can't be calling myself. Somebody's either spoofed my number or something's gone on, but I almost answered it just because I was so curious about it. And so, of course, that's exactly what they're counting on. It really is just, they send you the text and they want you to click so that they can download that bad software or get you off onto a site that they control. So if somebody gets a text from their own telephone number, just delete it. It's innocuous if you delete it, but if you click on it, it could be signs of a scam. All right, so let's talk about, we've talked a little bit about some ways to protect yourself, but let's kind of reiterate, where we've been on that. So sort of the 5 big things you can do to protect yourself online are to lock down your accounts. So that means you want to use passwords. You want to make them complex and strong. So that's pretty long. Sometimes the suggestion is to use an entire sentence that's meaningful to you that you'll remember. And then the password is the first letter of every word of that sentence, which I think, I have a hard time remembering, what, rolling on the floor, laughing out loud means. But, I think that can be effective if that works for you. Some people would prefer to use a password manager, and that's completely your choice. You just want to make sure that you know what you're getting into, because generally you'll have to pay for them. And so you want to know that your information is protected, and just whatever the terms of the deal are, you want to know what you're getting yourself into. The downside of a password manager is, it's generating a new password every time you use whatever your account is, right? You just log into the program, they generate those passwords. So you don't have to remember anything. They're not storing anything. But you have to remember your password to the password manager. If you lose that, then you're locked out of all of your accounts. So that's really, really, really important that you remember that, and then you protect that really carefully. So as long as you know that you're going to be able to do that, that could be a good option for you. Next, you want to secure your home Wi-Fi. It used to be the public Wi-Fi that we were the most worried about, but it turns out these days public Wi-Fi is much more protected than it was in the past. So now the issue really is to make sure that your home Wi-Fi is secure. And we have a whole article about that. I have a set of resource links. We've got, I think the link is ftc.gov/online security. I think that's what it is. But that gives you that takes you to sort of a menu of all of our different online security articles. And there are articles about passwords and and how to secure your home Wi-Fi. There's several different steps in there that you can do. It's a little too much for us to talk about right now, but if you wanted to go look that up, that's all in there. So, but basically what you want to do is like just encrypt the network. So you want to secure your router, make sure that you've got a high enough security product on your router and that it's updated, and just make sure that it's updated on a regular basis. Same thing with protect your computer and your phone. You want to make sure that you have security software in place, a firewall, that you update them on a regular basis, preferably automatically. If you can, set it to update automatically, and then that way you don't have to worry that you're going to miss a patch or that something's going to fall through. It'll come through as soon as it's available. I know sometimes people don't like that because sometimes an update may reconfigure your phone in a weird way or do something that you don't like, and so that they would prefer to handle the updates on their own. Just make sure that you make a habit of checking on a regular basis so that you don't fall through the cracks and you get that update as soon as it's available to you, and that you don't leave yourself open. So you want to recognize attempts to steal your information. These are all the things that we've been talking about. Phishing by text or by email, by pretending to be somebody legit. Those warning signs, chances are you'll be able to stop long enough to say, wait, this doesn't sound right. And hopefully you'll be able to stop people that you see maybe having that reckoning in their head. You can stop them from clicking or sending the info or money. And lastly, you want to back things up. So that just means saving your files on a regular basis. So not just on your actual device, you can save things to the cloud or to like an external hard drive or some sort of a storage device that's external to the actual device. Some people like to do both, kind of the belts and suspenders approach, which I don't see anything wrong with that. If you've backed up all of your information and you do it weekly, which I know sounds like it's a lot, but if you set up a system and you just do it, it just becomes part of your routine. If something happens to your device, let's say you click on a link unexpected and you didn't even realize you had clicked on a bad link, and then all of a sudden there's malware on your computer and it's going crazy, or you get locked out of it. There's a ransomware attack and they're demanding that you pay them in order to get your files back. Then if you've backed up your files, you've only lost a week worth of data, right? You haven't lost everything that you've ever put, all of your tax forms, all of your pictures, all of your important documents, work that you're working on, your emails. You haven't lost all of that if you're able to just get it back from a backup, right? So that helps remove some of that pressure and some of that. It's just another way to protect yourself. It's just that other layer of security, because the whole point is you don't want to lose your information. And if you've backed it up, you have it. I won't get too much into this one, but we've got an article about what to do if your email or your social media accounts were hacked. It's on that same online security menu. You basically want to update the security software, run a scan, and that will delete the malware. If you can do that fast enough, you might actually be able to just take care of it. You change your passwords, set up the multi-factor authentication, and then the provider of your email or your social media will have very particular procedures to them for how to get back into your account. And in our article, we've got links to Yahoo, Gmail, YouTube, other places on what the procedure is to get back into your account. And then once you're back in, you want to do a little detective work, right? You want to check the account settings to see if they had been changed, if the contact information has been changed. What's in your inbox? Did they send all kinds of weird emails out or messages out? Were there all kinds of posts that you didn't post that had been done that you can clean up and take out? And then you want to tell your friends that you were hacked and don't accept that friend request and don't send anything to that email. That wasn't from me. And hopefully that'll triage things and you'll be able to get back onto your new accounts and be okay. Again, I'm not going to walk through this one. This is from one of our articles. I just wanted to show you that, there are things you can do if you have paid a scammer and then you realize it. The procedure is going to change depending on, the method you use to pay them. But if you paid them through one of these payment apps, you can go through their customer service and see if you can reverse that or get the money back. If you paid through a gift card, it used to be you were out of luck. It's still not easy to get your money back, but there's a chance. Some of the gift card companies are more willing to credit you back and pay the money that you lost if you report it right away. And so it's always worth asking, because there's a chance that you might get it, especially if you're fast. The FTC has got an article at ftc.gov/gift cards that gives you the email and telephone number for the major gift card issuers. So that would be a nice handy reference to have, because if you run into this issue with a patron, there's that information right there that they could call immediately and try to get that process started. And so quickly, if you don't remember any of the URLs that we talked about today, I do have a little resource that I'll send to Joy to share with you all. But if you go to ftc.gov/libraries, that is our portal for librarians. It's kind of a curated list of our biggest information campaigns and our websites and a lot of the stuff that I talked about today. We're in the process of updating it to make sure that it's completely got all of our newest information. And even if you don't find something immediately that we talked about, you can go to consumer.ftc.gov, which is our main consumer site. And that's linked right there. And from there, you can look around and find anything that we've talked about. If you have run into one of these scams, or you talk to a patron who has run into a scam, whether they have lost money or not, we really want to hear about it. And I would ask you to go to reportfraud.ftc.gov. There's also the site in Spanish as well, if the consumer would prefer to report in Spanish. It's a step-by-step process, like a screens that sort of walk you through the whole process to put as much information as you have about this whole scam. It really, it's not like setting up a file with IRS or Social Security. You don't get like a case number and nobody calls you and there's no real follow-up. So I know it feels like, well, then why am I bothering to report? Because all this information that I was able to share today really comes from a lot of these reports that we get from consumers. We do independent investigations and we do independent monitoring out in the world, but sometimes that cutting edge of a scam happens when a consumer reports in and one of our investigators said, this is a weird twist. I hadn't seen this before. This is interesting. We got to do a blog post about this and get that out as soon as possible so that people know about it. Because the sooner we can warn people, the more likely we are to be able to help them avoid it. I wanted to mention this, ftc.gov/languages, because now this is a recent development. We're able to accept reports in a host of other languages. I think it's a dozen languages that, in addition to English and Spanish, that we're able to get those reports in. And there are translators live online that will translate to our counselors as the patron, the consumer is calling and reporting their scam. So we really would love to hear from as many people as possible in all of those languages, because as I said before, we know scams affect everybody and scammers are targeting all of us, but it may affect different communities in different ways, or there may be particular scams that are more prevalent in some communities rather than others. And the way for us to know that is to hear what's happening out there. We also have got at ftc.gov/languages, we have got more consumer-facing information. Like everything we do is translated into Spanish, but we've got some of the major information is translated into some of these other languages as well. We're trying to build out that library, but there is some stuff there on some of the main points. So if you serve patrons that are speaking other languages other than English and Spanish, you may want to take a look at that. Identitytheft.gov is an FTC website. If you or somebody that you know suspects they've been affected by identity theft, then send them to identitytheft.gov. There are certain steps that you need to take right away to sort of triage the identity theft recovery. And this site really helps you do that. It gives you a step-by-step guide on what you need to do, the sort of paperwork. It helps you fill out those sample letters to send to the different places to report that you're a victim of identity theft. When you file your report, your complaint into identitytheft.gov, just before you submit it, you can save it or print it out or do both. And when you print it out or save it, the format it prints out in, it says identity theft report at the top. That's a term of art in the law, and it conveys certain legal rights on you as an identity theft victim, and it allows you to demand certain things and to get things cleaned up off your credit report. If you attach that to a sample letter that's been filled out from the system with whatever you put into it, it'll fill in one of these letters, a cover letter, and you can send that to the company where you think the identity theft happened. You can send that to the credit reporting bureau. You can send it to the utility company or wherever it needs to go to get that process started. So it's secure. There's chat and phone support, and it's a really convenient way to sort of get you started on that recovery process. So I mentioned consumer.ftc.gov is our main website. If you want to order print materials to distribute at your library or to distribute in programming, go to ftc.gov/bulk order. You can, if you just want 1 or 2 copies, it's probably better just to print it off of our website. Bulk order is really it's generally like 20, 25 copies or more, into the hundreds. But you can look around and see what we have. We've got all kinds of materials about identity theft and different consumer issues. They're free. They're delivered free. The materials are free. You can cut and paste from them and use them on your social media, on your website, on your newsletter. You don't need permission. They're available for you to use. If you want to try to stay one step ahead of the scammers and hear about these scams as we're hearing about them, and we'll do a blog post, we also will send it out to our subscribers. You can sign up to ftc.gov/consumer alerts. Just put in your email address. The email comes to your email box maybe twice a week. Sometimes some weeks there's nothing. Some weeks there might be 3 if it's like there's a lot going on. But it's generally 1 or 2 a week. And again, if it's too much, you just get back on to ftc.gov/consumer alerts and get your name off there. So that is the end of my formal presentation, but I'm happy to take any questions that we might have.
Thank you so much. Please feel free to raise your hand and ask a question verbally or use the chat. That was very thorough. There might not be many questions.
I felt like I was kind of speeding through, but there was a bunch of things I wanted to make sure I touched on.
Well, I have one. So my question is about texts from politicians. How do I tell
Yeah.
if those are real or not? I get a ton of them, and they're usually people that I have, the names are people I have donated to, but I'm skeptical of them, so I don't ever respond to them on
Yeah.
text.
So I will tell you this: FTC doesn't have any control over political speech or non-commercial speech. So if a real charity is reaching out to you or a real politician is reaching out to you, we don't have any say in that, right? That's not in our jurisdiction. It's just commercial speech. But I will tell you, if that scammer pretends to be a politician or the charity is pretending to be a charity, but it's really a scammer, yeah, sure, you certainly don't want to be clicking on that link. That's why I personally tell people, just don't click on a link. Don't respond to that. If it's from somebody that you might support and you're thinking, oh, I'd like to send them this last minute money to help them out, I would call the local campaign. If that was something that I really wanted to do, I know it's kind of a hassle, and the whole point is you want to be able to use the convenience and do something right away. But that's what scammers know, and that's what they're trying to take advantage of. So I would reach out to the candidate's local office, and if it's something that you're concerned about, if they're saying something you're concerned about, check that out. And if they're just asking for a donation, you stop and think, do I want to give them any more money? And then do it. Just don't do it through that text.
Great, thank you. I did put an evaluation for the webinar in the chat. It'd be helpful if people could fill that out. And we still have a couple minutes if anyone else has questions.
Or even if you want to share the kinds of things that you're seeing with your patrons. I'm always interested to hear that.
So I have a question about working with the patrons. Like, what's the best way to, like, now that we have some more knowledge about this and we're maybe a little more savvy about spotting things when they're weird and not right, but is it appropriate, like if you see somebody, like you mentioned that example of the cashier, is that something that could happen at a library where you see something happening and you intervene? Or would it be more like having these resources available and maybe doing a program or something about them?
I would imagine, yeah, it's a combination of all of those things. Like having the resources available and out in different places where people might pick them up, I think has got to be effective for the long haul. And definitely in programming, especially, I've talked to some librarians that, it's always a challenge to get people to come out for programming. And if you're already doing something that's tied to a festival or a celebration or a time of year or something that's happening in the community, and you slip in some consumer ed in there, sometimes that's more effective because people are getting the message, but you don't have to get them to come out just to hear about identity theft, right? They're doing whatever they're going to do, but that stuff is there for them too. But certainly, if you had enough people interested, doing programs just around some of these issues, I think can be very effective. And I suspect whether or not you want to intervene or talk to a patron probably depends on the library system, the community, the individual librarian, and the particular patron that came in and what's going on. I imagine many librarians have relationships with a lot of the people that come into their library, and it might make it a little easier to get that conversation going and to suggest to them, hey, what's up here?
Yeah, that's good advice. Barbara, you want to ask a question?
Thank you so much for this information. We actually had an 80-year-old volunteer who volunteers all the time here the other day, who was like, oh yeah, I was on my computer and there was trouble, but Microsoft is helping me. I gave the number came up, I gave them a call, and yep. And
yeah,
so we were able to call your bank now. No, really, you need to call your bank. Microsoft does not help you in this way.
But I mean, that's just fantastic that you were able to say to him right then and there, let's take care of this, and to be able to spot it, because especially those text scams, when they first started to happen, they looked really scary. You're like, this pop-up came up, like, why wouldn't it be real? Like, how would you know that that's just a fake thing, right? Now we know, but like initially it looked so real. And same thing with like the AI voice cloning. Like if somebody hadn't warned you about that and you think that you hear a voice that of course you're going to react, right? And that's what the scammers count on. Yeah. We appreciate what you're doing at the front lines.
Well, thank you again. This has been so educational and super helpful for librarians and just for all of us in our own personal lives as well. So thank you again, and thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.